Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and students of the ANU. It's my very great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to Commissioner Andris Piebalgs to the Australian National University. I understand that this is the Commissioner's very first trip to Australia, and I'm delighted that he's taken the time to visit us in Canberra today. As the Commissioner no doubt knows, it's not a coincidence that he should be speaking today at the ANU. As Australia's leading university in many ways, we enjoy a privileged place as the only national university, the most research-intensive university in Australia, and being based here in Canberra, we enjoy a ready platform for access to and engagement with our public policy colleagues in the Australian government. Through our Australian-Japan Research Centre, the China Economy and Business Program, the National Centre for Latin American Studies, the Centre for Strategic Studies, and many other programs, the ANU has the full breadth of regional experience, which in turn reinforces our teaching and research excellence in the wider geopolitical context. The European Union's place in the world cannot be overstated. Its collective economic power is extremely substantial, as its ability to influence global norms, standards, and forums, a fact which emphasises the need for Australian public policy practitioners and business leaders to understand better the EU's internal competencies and motivations, as well as its external ambitions. We have a great many scholars at ANU with expertise in a wide variety of disciplines and specialities, from the humanities and languages to European history, European studies, European law, and of course the trade and business aspects of working with the EU's single market. Over the years we've developed those capacities and now enjoy a close relationship with the delegation of the European Commission in Australia and New Zealand, many of the individual embassies here in Canberra, as well as the Australian government departments who have an interest in the policies and the politics of the European Union. Through the activities of our National Europe Centre, and more recently our appointment of a representative of ANU in Brussels, we look forward to building on our profile in European issues and to providing an appropriate platform for greater EU-Australia engagement on issues that are of great importance to both areas. One of these issues, the one that we'll be discussing this evening, is how we will tackle the related challenges of climate change and energy security. As is often the case, a shared problem can also provide an outstanding opportunity for collective problem solving. And for Australia and the EU, the benefits of working together on issues ranging from the design of emissions trading schemes to the technology behind carbon capture and storage are immense. Before handing over to the Commissioner, I would like to congratulate him on receiving, just last month in Paris, one of the 3 2009 Energy Efficiency Visionary Awards. The winners were selected by an international steering committee, and Commissioner Piebalgs was selected in recognition of his leadership and work to develop an integrated climate and energy policy backed up by a detailed action plan, which has put Europe at the forefront of advancing energy efficiency issues worldwide. Who better then than to talk to us this evening about Europe's approach to energy security and climate change? I invite Commissioner Piebalgs to address us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great honor to be in Australian National University to speak about European energy policy, because I think that is an issue that, is taking more and more interest in the world. And I would like also to say Lavakar to my compatriots, because I know that some of the audience also know and speak Latvian, but even if Latvian is official language, I will still today address you in English, so I would ask my compatriots to excuse me for this particular case. Well, European Union has been established as an energy community, coal and steel community, and nuclear community was a way that we have addressed the issues. Because at that time, energy issues have been clearly as the ones that catalyzed the misunderstandings between European nations. And it was very clear that sharing the resources, sharing approaches, we could first of all to build the society that is in Europe without a conflict, and at the same time also to take a new energy challenges like nuclear. But in 60 years, definitely European Union has changed a lot. And for a lot of time, there have been no problems of having cheap energy resources. There have been one period with OPEC being quite tough on cutting supplies of oil when the energy policy started to matter. Countries have developed the ideas and they said, well, we don't have oil, but we have ideas. And there have been some steps taken. But with the rebound of the cheap oil, cheap gas, it came back, and energy issues for a long time have not been on the agenda of the European member states. 3 years ago, I met one of the most long-serving prime ministers in Europe, and he said, well, in the European councils, to his knowledge, they never talked about energy. Then why it has changed so strongly? What was the reason of it? And there have been, well, 3 issues that really change attitude towards the energy in the European Union. First was the unexpected oil price spike at the end of 2004. Why it was such a shock? Well, an International Energy Agency predicted quite opposite, that at the end of the 2004, there will be oil surplus, and actually the prices will collapse. And then unexpectedly, the demand outstrips the supply, and the prices started to be extremely volatile. For us, it was a shock because the consumers have been completely unprepared to it. So consumers said, well, what's wrong? What are you doing? Why we are suffering? The second shock came from the cuts of the gas supply to the European Union via Ukraine from Russia. That was also a big surprise, because the gas supplies came to the European Union via Ukraine also during the Soviet times. And there have been sometimes some minor cuts or technical cuts, but never it came to the scale of understanding that security of supply could be an issue. Well, and the third was that it was very clear that each and every country can't address alone these challenges. So it was very clear understanding that we need to work together to address this issue. And as a result, at the end of 2005, heads of state and government said, well, we need to do something together. When I first time saw the final document from Hampton Court, I was surprised that Tony Blair put in even the notion European grid. Because basically, if I see by treaty, as it stands today, the member states have full sovereignty about their energy policies. So whatever we do or on the basis of other treaty articles, or actually by common will of all member states. So that means that you need a clear understanding and drivers behind it, how it could work. But I think the biggest catalyst towards a common action on energy issues was the climate change. Climate change issue is something that came, well, we can say earlier. But the latest report, the fourth report of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, brought a clear knowledge that it is the humans that actually provoke the change, with the consequences that they will affect the whole mankind. And until this fourth report of International Panel on Climate Change, the perception was, well, it will go away. It will go away. A lot of companies said the science is not good enough, there is a vested interest, and so on. But I think it was a moment of the change when even the most opposing companies to the science on climate change said, well, it is an issue. It is an issue, and we got at a new qualitative level of understanding that this issue should be addressed. So as a result, we have faced these energy policies, first from our internal security of supply issue, secondly from climate change issue. But I think we got a very good support from the International Energy Agency. International Energy Agency clearly started to change its way of mind, saying, well, if we see how demand is growing, that by 2030 we will need practically 50% more of energy supplies to cope with the rising demand. And that's, we can't manage. We can't manage it globally, and particularly also that world population will grow. So as a result, it was very clear seen that if we continue with current pattern, we are not sustainable, neither environmentally, neither from security of supply point of view. So my task was actually try to formulate how we address this issue. When first time I wrote the starting the point of departure, a draft for first strategic energy review, I gave it to a couple of energy experts. And they said, well, it's not about energy. It is more about environment. And there was a difficult choice to make, how to format, which are the basis of energy policy, how you change it, what is the main driver. And for me, it was very clear from energy security point of view, EU faced very particular challenge. We are 50% dependent on imports, 2030 grows to 70, and with some countries taking very huge and particular role in it. What could we do with this? To limit imports for Russia, from Algeria, or from any other part? It doesn't make sense, because politically it's sensitive, and secondly, what is the point of it? So you need to find the driver that express both environmental and also energy policy need of change. And for me, it was very clear CO2 emissions. Because if you cut CO2 emissions, you get a couple of issues exactly that you would address in energy policy. First, your energy policy is much more efficient. So you consume less resources compared with well, business as usual scenario. Second, with the carbon price or less CO2 emissions, you move in the technologies that are different, that are cleaner, that are based on use of local resources. It means solar, it means wind, it means biomass. So for us, the basic choice was to find the driver or indicator that brings change of environmental impact of energy policy, but at the same time brings also security of supply and competitiveness of European industries. Because with a high oil price, we got another issue on our shoulders that is moving out of the wells. Because you pay more and more for the energy resources that you, well, consume. And this wealth does not come back in the country. And also, high price not always makes what you will usually expect. It decreases consumption. If I need to live at the outskirts of the city, and there is no public transport, and I need to get to work, well, higher energy price doesn't mean that I could cope with it. I need to drive, so I will pay for a higher oil price. So I believe that this basic change for us was to agree that we will cut in 2020 20% less CO2 emission, because it makes a fundamental impact. When this decision was being made, then the question was what scheme you use to address this issue. And I was a bit of surprised that it was experience of emission trading scheme that we took as a basis, without much debate. Why I was surprised? You usually meet energy ministers in my job, and they complained a lot about the emission trading scheme. They said, well, it drives the price up, as we gave allowances for free, windfall profits, and so on. But still, it was very clearly accepted intellectually in all the 27 countries that is the best way to move ahead, and it was accepted by industry. For whatever reason, industry normally in Europe doesn't like tax. Perhaps that we tax them a lot. An emission trading scheme seemed to them, well, not such a bad instrument to cut CO2 emissions. So that means that basics of energy policy is carbon price and reducing CO2 emissions in longer term. Well, what instruments you could use? You can say, well, let's leave it to the industry. Let's leave it to the industry that it should deal with it. Well, it's not such a simple thing. You can't leave to the industry and just expect that they will deliver. Because you can bring carbon price to the consumers. And if you bring it to the consumer, well, then you end up that basically you don't change the energy sector. So that means that you need also some policies that support this basic drive of emission trading scheme and carbon price. And we have chosen 3 policy blocks for support of this less carbon in energy sector. First of all was renewable energy. In renewable energy was being seen and still sometimes seen as a marginal source, as a something that you can never make be big. And I think it's a huge mistake. Because if we see the potential that is bringing from sun, because we can always say that wind energy is part of it, well, it is a source of energy that is a local source of energy. And at that time, in 2005, we have pretty positive experience in the couple of member states, like Denmark, like Germany, like Spain. And in Spain, in a couple of days, when they integrate in their grid, around 20% consumption stemmed from the wind energy. So it was very clear that to make a breakthrough, we need also additional policy on renewable energy. But to support renewable energy, it comes from the national member state budget. So we needed to find the instrument. And I think that was the most difficult part of the whole task. We managed to agree that the whole European Union will have, in 2020, 20% renewable energy in final consumption. But at the same time, well, how you transform it into a national member state target. We tried to work on potential basis, but how you estimate wind potential, how you estimate solar potential, how you estimate biomass potential. And at the end of the day, we went for the wealth potential, because the nations that are more wealthy could invest more in renewable energy. But we allowed also for these nations to invest in the countries that have better resources. So we ended up with a list of 27 member countries having each binding energy targets. For example, Germany 18%, Sweden 49%, Luxembourg 10%. So we managed to build a system that each and every member country is legally obliged to achieve by 2020 part of their energy consumption from renewable energy sources. And the success was that each and every member country agreed. None of them said, well, it's easy target. Everybody said it's difficult target. But another challenge is, well, targets sometimes are being met and not achieved. How to achieve this target? How to follow the whole process? And we agreed with those member countries that they prepare national action plans is a basis how you move to this target. So that means that each country has a path described how you come to the target. And the European Commission has a right and ability to see if the target intermediate is not achieved, you need to adopt or change your action plan to really be on path achieving it. So I think we adopted this. But during the debate, the big challenge came from another issue. It is from biofuels. Biofuels have been seen, rightly or wrongly, as a sector, well, that brings not solution but new challenges. One was food price, and second was, well, environmental impact. So deciding on a renewable energy target, we also needed to deal with sustainability. And after long debate, we have agreed that each biofuel consumed in the European Union should correspond to the three basic criteria. First of all, it should guarantee CO2 savings compared with the oil. We took a basis of 35% in current biofuels that grows by 2017 to 50%, or for new installation even to 60%. So saying that if the biofuels is used, they are environmentally friendly. And we defined also two no-go areas. One area to produce biofuels for the land where is a high carbon stock. So not to release it, because producing biofuels or using biomass from this area, you make more damage than good. So it is no-go area. And another no-go area is, well, the places that are preserved for nature, that you can't use this also for biofuels. So that means that we define the sustainability criteria that I think it's the first time ever in any area you have defined no-go and conditions also for using. So energy, renewable energy is an extremely important part. And for me, it was never only part for sustainability. It's also the part that addresses security of supply. First of all, security of supply in the European Union. Why in the European Union it's so important? As our resources of oil and gas are depleting, and we are much more dependent of buying energy everywhere in the world, we have a challenge of, well, producing our own energy. And as I told, for us, wind, biomass, and solar is the way to feed us for a substantial time. Second, it gives jobs. Wind energy created in the European Union hundreds of thousands of jobs already now. Created also technological knowledge that gives us possibility to transfer this knowledge. And lastly, I have been in Africa, and I think what all the development programs that we are facing, we are not addressing the main issue. The main issue is actually energy. But you can't expect to build nuclear power plant or big coal-fired power plant in Africa in each and every place. The needs are the most easiest being addressed by small, decentralized power generation. Couple of solar cells change the life in the village. Windmills gives the access to the energy to the people that never have had. So actually, renewable energy brings solution to the world because it addresses the areas where we can't expect ever to build big grids or big energy supply. So that's why I believe also for our security, renewable energy is absolute must and should be achieved. So renewable energy we address in all three sectors. Power, we address also issue in heating and cooling. And this is a rather challenging area for using renewable energy, but very potential. And last but not least, issues related to the transport. We formulated 10% targets that sometimes is misunderstood, the 10% biofuels target. No, our legislation says that 10% in transport should come from renewable energy source. It comes from the wind energy, it comes from the hydrogen produced using windmills, and it could be also, well, electricity produced by using biomass. So it means that we open this issue saying it should not, we should in transport only follow the classical oil path. There should be other ways how to address the transport sector with the fuel. I believe that it is the right approach, because what I am afraid of, that if we don't address the transport sector and keep it as an oil-based sector, the risk is that we will be locked on gas to liquids and coal to liquids. Because when we will be having more difficulties to supply us from the, well, existing countries, and there is a limit what they can produce to the market, we definitely, or industry in a lot of countries, will go to coal to liquid. Coal to liquid technology is too challenging and environmentally not particularly friendly. So we need to provide the answer before that. And that's why I believe we need to address that challenge. We put also a lot of emphasis on second generation biofuels, because you can achieve this 10% target also just using biofuels from the second generation. It means lignocelluloses or biomass to liquid technologies. I know that these at this stage is quite expensive, but well, with the technological work, you can decrease the costs. So second generation biofuels, I believe, is also part of the answer. At the same time, I know that we are criticized a lot of times saying that biomass is much more efficient if you produce power. It's true. But if you don't address the transport, the problems doesn't move out of it. So I believe that it is a very challenging and promising area. But I believe that more focus that we addressed more, and Professor was very kindly referring for this, well, a word that was, well, I think people have been too kind to me. It was a focus on energy efficiency. Because it's true that we are wasting energy. We are wasting energy each and every day in each and every place. And if we manage to deal with this waste, then the world will have much less challenges. And we know from cost efficiency, it is, well, technology is there. It's not applied basically from market failure point of view. Because, for example, in construction sector, developer is developing real estate. But it will be final user. It will be somebody who will buy the apartment or somebody who will rent the apartment. So he will pay energy bill. Why? The one that develops that should care about a double glazing or very efficient technology being used for insulation, because it's increased the costs. He will be more difficult to sell it. And that we moved, starting from, most importantly, from the issue of regulation. I know that regulation is never popular. It's always hated, but all the best achievements that we have in this world achieved was unfortunately through the regulation. Human nature somehow asked for sometimes to change behavior not only by education but also through the regulation. And we addressed, first of all type of appliances. For all appliances in the EU, there is a performance standard on energy. So that means a minimum standard that you, well, maximum energy consumption that you can put appliance in the market, so-called eco-design. And we moved to the issue that sometimes makes me a bit uneasy, but I think it was the right decision. We took decision by 2012 to phase out all incandescent light bulbs. Why it was such a big decision? Because incandescent light bulbs, well, it's not dangerous. It is nothing that makes a health a problem. But seeing that the waste of energy is coming through the sector, and there is a market-provided instrument to give the same quality of lighting, that, well, why need to keep it? So we moved of it out, at the same time providing for each of the sectors alternatives that already existed in the market. We moved now on fridges, TV sets, and so on. We face here another basic, well, it seems small challenge, but it is not such a small challenge of labeling. Because when you go buying appliance in the European Union, you are very well informed. There is a label, energy consumption label A to G. So you know that if you buy A, you buy very efficient. G, well, it's not efficient, so you never will buy G. But as the manufacturers develop, everything comes in A. So you go to buy a new fridge in the European Union and you will have only A. But all A are not equal. And we face now challenge or to rescale, so that means that today's appliance that have A tomorrow with B, or to open the system and say A plus, A double plus, A triple plus. And this is not such an easy question because manufacturers would like to open, consumers would like to close. So we need to sort it out. And today, well, in the European Parliament and the Council, we are discussing how to make labeling system efficient enough that accompany these minimum performance standards. Another area where we moved with regulation, and in the EU it was not easy, it was buildings. Well, the basis of legislation is that buildings should have also minimum performance standards, and when I buy the real property or I rent a real property, I should be informed about energy performance of this real estate. I can buy whatever I like, but I should be at least informed, and the building codes should be streamlined in the way that new property or renovated property has higher and higher building standards. Well, it requires a lot of administration, but that was the only way that we found it how to address energy efficiency in buildings. But the biggest fight, well, now perhaps it would be less, was with car manufacturers. EU has, well, a lot of car manufacturing industry. And the cars, it's true, with the time have been more efficient, if I see from the point of view of powering the car, and at the same time also, well, they have been more comfortable. So as a result, the energy consumption per car has not changed. And we needed to address that car manufacturers really care about energy consumption and CO2 emissions. So this 120 or 130 grams of CO2 emissions per kilometer was a basic struggle to really to get this legislation through. But we managed to get it through. So that means that car manufacturers are now legally obliged to provide for the market cars that are energy efficient and environmentally friendly. What happens if they don't do this? Well, then they will face fines. So this legislation, I thought, was key that really drives car manufacturers to think how to provide for the market attractive product with high environmental value. Until now, there was not such an incentive. So we deal with the regulation side. But it is always a question that you need also incentives. When, well, I could mention examples that successful and unsuccessful at the same time. When the recession started, a lot of car selling stopped. So people starting to lose their jobs, and well, it was rather painful view. And some of the governments decided about scrapping premium. So you give away your old car, it gets scrapped, and well, you get a voucher that allows you to buy a new car much cheaper compared with the market price. And this definitely revived the market. The difficulty is that, well, this scheme is not very much related to environment, but it definitely created or continued to have the jobs. So what we are trying to encourage through the tax measures, through the, well, support to the consumers, to come to the issues that stimulates change of society faster in the energy efficiency use of cars, appliances, and renovating. We also changed the structural instruments that we use in European Union for the regions that, well, for cohesion needs to be brought up to the other parts of the EU. And these regions get more money, granted money, for energy efficiency in buildings for use of renewable energy. So I believe this incentive side is the one that we are concentrating now a lot, really to get this change not only by regulation, but also with the positives that encourages people to do what society would like them to do, but for a lot of reasons they never had enough incentive. And last but not least on energy efficiency is the issues that are related to the, well, top-down or bottom-up issues. Because regulation comes and falls on the shoulders. And as I told, people tolerate, accept, but never like too much. And energy efficiency is an area where there is a lot of players. But the most important players, in my opinion, are local municipalities. Public transport, you can't decide from Brussels how it will run. Possibilities for insulation or renovation, street lighting, you can't regulate from Brussels. And we started something that I am very proud of. It is so-called Covenant of Mayors. These are the cities that takes obligation themselves to be more efficient than EU. So to have by 2020 not 20% less CO2 emission, but more than 20%, so 25 and 30. They establish their action plan for this, and they follow the path, and we are financially supporting them. So that means that energy efficiency is being built from the grassroots and going up. So that means that we have not only commission, not only government, but local municipalities really caring for the issues that is there for energy policy and also at the same time for the society as a whole. This Covenant of Mayors is now 500 cities. They are working together, they exchange their best ideas, and I think that at the end of the day, perhaps will be the most efficient instrument in energy efficiency. Because nothing is better than free will and innovation stemming from the stakeholders. And stakeholders are the whole society. Well, we will continue to work on energy efficiency because, as I told, I think it's the most important area. And there are still a lot of issues to be resolved. But what I like, that I think in EU, it is now the basic policies that everybody accepts. We have the biggest fair, it's Hanover. It is each year, addresses particular issues. And this year, it was energy efficiency that stemmed from each and every area. And not only classical areas that we say, well, insulation and so on, but there is also something that completely is different. It is tools for industry. We always expected that we achieve the maximum efficiency, resource use efficiency, because, well, it's competitive advantage. And now we discover that you can be 25 to 40% more efficiently. So we never thought that we should regulate it. And good that we never have regulated. Because industries themselves understood that it is a possibility for market. And you really can, with a more efficient use of resources, to help to keep the manufacturing industry in the European Union. So this is something that I think we can be proud quite of. Well, how we measure it? Well, unfortunately, it's again, or fortunately, it's another 20% target. But this time it's not binding. It is a target aspirational that we believe by 2020 we could be 20% more efficient. We don't have at this stage target to each and every member country. But there is one target that in a way helps. When I spoke about 20% target of CO2 emission reduction, part is addressed through emission trading scheme. But these are the sectors that are big sectors. But part we address through the binding target of non-ETS sectors to each and every country. And there again, energy efficiency comes in. So I believe that we don't need additional targets like a binding target. But it's enough of all instruments that they will make what we are looking for. The third area that was an accompanying process for this market drive is research and technology. In research and technology, well, we spend some money in the energy sector. There have been some research done. But we never felt the need to make a fast progress in the area. And we identified 6 areas which we believe we really need to address and be successful very fast. First area is the wind energy. Well, in wind energy, basic of the issue is not about cost, not about size, but there are always some inconveniences. Wind turbines make a noise. Could we address this? Yes, we can. Wind turbines should, well, switch off when there is too much wind. Can we manage? Yes, we can. So wind energy is fine-tuning. Another area is solar energy. In solar energy, usually was perceived by broad population as only solar cells. It's true that photovoltaics costs a lot. And there is a science and research done that decrease the costs and have more efficiency. But we looked for the concentrated solar power. It means solar towers and other technologies that could produce substantial amounts of electricity. When I first time heard some people saying in the European Parliament that we will have a lot of solar farms in North Africa and we will power Europe partially through the cable from the Sahara, I thought, this is madness. It can't be true. That's completely out of the question. And now seeing what is there in Seville with the solar towers and hyperbolic troughs, I would say, well, it could be done. I know that it, still needs a evolve, but I would not say that it's madness. And my opinion changed actually in 2 years' time that we made this progress. So solar energy is not marginal. It's not only photovoltaic cells. So with increased investment in this area, we will decrease the cost and we will be able to move it. Third area I addressed, it is a second generation biofuel. As I told, I do not know at this stage something better for the transport sector. Perhaps somebody will bring. Fourth area is the issue related to the smart grids. And this is something new and something that a lot of society does not know it. Well, we have some places in Europe where people are using solar cells and selling the energy when they don't need to the grid. And in our belief, next system will be completely different energy. It will not be so much centralized based on the big power generators. Well, they will be. But we expect that there will be a lot of places of small energy generation that will use for own consumption and go back to the grid. And one particularity for it is definitely that people should know consumption and know what the peaks and where the loss of the supply is. And by 2020, 80% of households in the European Union will be equipped with smart meters. 2022, they all will have. And that means that consumer is completely well informed how to use energy. So I am not using my washing machine when the price is the highest. I will use it when the price is the lowest. And this is a fundamental change. If I have a solar cell, I also will go from benefit of selling electricity. So basically it means that this is a change for the third industrial revolution. It's based on the grid. Grid is expensive, and I know some mining companies are happy that copper price will grow up, but I think it's small price to pay. We can't keep the system as it's been now. So I think it is a basic change, and we need to address the issue. Fifth is carbon capture and storage. This was one of the most painful and bruising stories in the whole discussion about energy policy. I don't know how much you have seen the Greenpeace produced, how they see the world of energy supply. And they base the energy supply on 3 factors: gas, energy efficiency, and renewables. But what has changed in the meantime since they published Energy Evolution? The change was that gas supplier countries are not always easy, and gas production is also very challenging. If I see the new production from gas stemming from north of Russia, from Barents Sea, well, I would say it's extremely costly, and it's not so easy to supply the market. Even LNG developments also leave the traces on the environment. So we really clearly know that without coal and lignite, we can't deal with the energy challenges, at least until we have technology that really deal with it. But if we need to use the coal, there needs some limit of efficiency that we could achieve. So 43%, 44, 45, let's assume 47. But there is a limit. What to do with CO2 emitted? Well, we have good projects in Rotterdam when gas, CO2 is used for greenhouses, but well, we produce too much CO2 to have to it. So intellectually, we have no better idea than capture, transport, and store CO2. And we have examples where it was done quite successfully, in Algeria, in Norway, where this process functioned. So we moved to the support of carbon capture and storage. First of all, legally. It should be legal to do this. EU has now legislation that permits carbon CO2 storage. Well, we need still to fight for public acceptance sometimes. Because one thing to accept it intellectually is that CO2 is stored in Sleipner or in Algeria. Completely different if it's not 1 kilometer from my property. So it's not quite the same. So we need still to work with people and explain that CO2 storage is not CO storage. And it's not something that will endanger or, in the lightest case, decrease the level of property. But the biggest challenge is to have real size carbon capture and storage power plants. And tomorrow we start the process that we identified projects, it's around 10 of them, and they are asked to submit, well, proposals. We will support it from the ground. At this stage, we attribute to this process 1 billion euro. That means 180 million euro per project. I know that it's not sufficient, but potentially we have also put in the legislation possibility that part of the allowances that are used in the, for the new entrants, as we call, 300 million, could be used also for support or the projects in renewables or CCS. And if I assume that carbon price with roughly 40 euro per ton of CO2, it's 12 billion that could be used for these purposes. So I am quite confident that we will manage. And today now I signed in Australia cooperation on the Global Carbon Capture and Storage Institute that was initiated by Prime Minister Raab. I think it is an important issue and we need to deal with it. Without carbon capture and storage, to my current knowledge, we can't address the climate change. We will be unable to cope the emissions that we have in 2050, only 20 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions. It's impossible to imagine that how we can do without this technology. And technology basically is used in smaller projects. We know how to capture, we know how to store, we know how to transport. Now the scale matters. And if it is there, we can definitely address. And last issue is nuclear. Nuclear was the issue that we have not talked too many times. And nuclear has a, well, repercussion after Chernobyl. Does nuclear belong to the solution or not to solving the climate change and energy security issue? Well, I will have the liberty to say yes, it does. Partially, we embarked on this technology. Well, we can say, was it the right step or wrong step? Well, I can't answer it anymore. I think if we moved back in 50s, perhaps we could have different decisions. But we took decision to use nuclear energy, nuclear for producing electricity. And it was seen at that time that it will produce so cheap in energy that we will have no need to meter it. Well, today I would say it's not cheap solution because there is a lot of capital costs. You need to deal with decommissioning. You need to have the storage of high-level radioactive waste. It's not easy process. But we are in this technology, and this technology has advantage that it's not CO2, and it's a different technology. So we need to improve this technology. In Olkiluoto in Finland, we are building the third generation of nuclear power plant. It will have less nuclear waste, but it's important to move forward with generation 4 because it will be practically a closed cycle. At the same time, saying said this, I think we should not also be brought in the illusion that we can solve basic issues of the energy policy globally through nuclear. It is energy efficiency and renewable. Answer is clear. But to bridge the gap, it's definitely healthy that we continue to use the technologies that we know and that corresponds to one of the goals that we would like to have. diversification of the sources from one side, and from other side is issues related to the no emitting CO2. Well, but now I'm coming to this issue how we can work all together in the EU, because we have 27 member countries, and as I told, energy policy of each and every country is very much having its own views and own approach to it. And the basic approach to this issue is internal EU energy market. Internal market means if the European Union, so for gas and electricity flows, we have the same rules in all the European Union, and also no hampered cross-border flows. And this provides for enormous economies. For example, there is a sea cable between Netherlands and Norway. And this energy mix of Netherlands is completely different from the energy mix of Norway. So the winner are both sides, because when the prices are higher in Netherlands or the ASEX, the power comes from Norway. When it's different way around, it is going different way. So what we have is an enormous potential of synergy. EU has very different energy mix. There are countries very strongly based on water power. There are countries that are having nuclear. There are countries having coal. But the richness of it, that we are so diverse, that we need to use it. And we did two major steps to really integrate us in recent times. One, we adopted the legislation that provides for two important things. One is to have the regulation that is not hampering cross-border energy flows. Because sometimes you have regulator on one side of the border, regulator on the other side of the border. For Australia, perhaps it's not very good example, but could be also here. And when it comes to the border, well, you have not the same possibilities to flow. So we did it. But the most importantly, we established the rules that we network providers, they need to have 10 years investment plan. As I told, in my opinion, for having third industrial revolution, the answer strongly is dependent on the grid availability, on different type of grid. So that means that if you have wind farm offshore and the wind comes in Germany, well, you can't keep it in Germany. It goes also to Poland. You need to strengthen Polish grid. And it goes also to Switzerland. So in a way, you need to develop grid commonly. You can't keep grid developed in each and every part of it. And this common development of the grid brings a new synergy. Additionally, we did that we have never done before. But it was provoked partially of the gas crisis, that we decided also to invest public money in the grids. Why we did? Well, there are two basic challenges. One is that market sometimes is too small to develop interconnection. And good example are Baltic countries. Baltic countries regained independence since 1991. They are in the European Union since 2004, and they are still energy islands. Because the size of the market is small enough compared to this necessary investment. So to really interconnect, we need to help to get interconnected. Second, well, there is an issue of market failures sometimes. If you base the economy on the private initiative, then company has always an interest to keep the market, well, a bit under its own control. And then sometimes investment does not come. And just to stimulate that, I believe the public authorities should encourage to do this. So I believe that this step is one-off. But I don't exclude that in some cases, to really integrate new sources of energy, particularly offshore wind, we will need also public support program. So that means that first time in the history of European Union, we invest 4 billion in energy infrastructure, 2 billion for electricity and gas grids, 1 billion for carbon capture and storage, and 1 billion for offshore wind energy. So in the belief that it is necessary, not only because of recession, that's definitely made an impact. At the same time, it is an answer also to the energy challenge in general. Well, I would like to address also some issue on external energy policy, because it is always a challenge for us. We are 27 countries, and there is one supplier, or well, suppliers are less than 27. And we have had for a long time very confusing policies that each country tried to resolve external energy supplies with individual contracts. It's continuous. But we have made improvement. And when at the beginning of this year, we have been cut from the gas supply via Ukraine, then for negotiations in Moscow, it was Presidency of the European Union and Commission. So it was not member states. So member states said, well, we trust you. You will speak in the name of all of us. So that means that in external energy policy, we are getting more stronger. And with the policies like Southern Gas Corridor, gas from the Caspian Sea in Iraq, it's not only policy of a couple of member states, it's EU policy. Development of LNG, it's not only policy of the few member states, it's a EU policy. It will be always uneasy because external competencies is definitely the ones that could hamper sometimes efficiency of this active. But I don't mind. I believe that really each nation should be confident what we do externally, because there is a lot of sensitiveness, and I believe that we, even if it's just difficult method of tries, we could manage. And I would finish, I think, the biggest challenge for energy policy, perhaps not for the EU, but for the world. It is a Copenhagen conference. I believe we can't afford that it is a half success. I'm not speaking about even failure. And for me, the success would mean that we agree, developed countries and developing countries, on three basic issues. First, developed countries are cutting their emissions in very strong ways that we achieve the goals that we are looking for, that temperature does not increase more than 2 degrees centigrade compared with pre-industrial levels. Developing countries agree to deviate in binding way from business as usual scenario. And third, we agree on financial architecture, how to support developing world to develop their energy strategies that are consistent with climate change policy. It's a huge challenge, but I very much appreciate that Australia is now coming with 25% target for 2020. I think it's courageous, it's achievable, but definitely it helps also for the European Union. And European Union said, well, we are agreed on 20%. We will do anyhow, but we are ready to go even further, 30%. So I believe that there are good start, but we really need to be successful. And I very much appreciate today the contact with Australian government that sees exactly the same this challenge. And I wish all of us the success, because I believe if we are not successful, well, we will waste the time, first of all. And secondly, it will be really blow to the international cooperation. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was very happy to make at least some comments of EU energy policy. I will be very happy if there is a time to answer the questions, but I spoke rather lengthily. But the EU is such a huge, a complex structure and not easy to explain, and I avoided some terminologies that perhaps would so confuse some of you who are now not experts in the European Union. But I believe I am proud what member states and European parliaments have achieved so far, and I believe that we will be consistent in our policy and successful in our policy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We can, if you'll agree, we can take about 15 minutes of questions. Would that be in order? If you'd like, some of you may be planning to leave, and that would be fine. You can leave by the back in a gracious way. But I'm sure that there would be many questions, and I thought that I might just indicate that we should restrict that to 15 minutes. So let me just have an indication of eagerness to ask questions. I've got one up the back, but let me just get a sense about how to do this. So I would anticipate that in 15 minutes we might be looking for a relatively large number of questions, or we'll disappoint questioners, which says that pointed questions to the Commissioner would be more appreciated than long questions, if I could put it that way. I will act as the chair. I will do it graciously. We'll start up the back there, thanks.
My name is Jorge from the University of New South Wales. 2 years ago, a very special initiative was in Australia. The Minister of Environment spotted the problem of burning rainforests. Volume 6 billion CO2 tons per year, 20%. If this would be stopped within a few weeks, and the question is, will our Europe as a big power globally help to stop this burning of the rainforests? Within a few weeks, we have 20% done, apart from all the other 20% we need. Question, what can Europe do? Thank you.
The issue of rainforest is rather complex issue, and why they are destroyed? Because people are poor. And I think the only way is really the developer support for paying to protect them. I don't see any other magical solution, because the destroying of rainforest goes because people just produce or use a timber or use the land. So the only way that we can support, like Brazil's initiative fund for supporting rainforests. I think that is the only way, and establish efficient or support efficient mechanism to control. In Brazil, well, with all the good intention of President Lula, there are not sufficient policemen or people that are doing it, and I think it's an issue of money. That's the only way we can do. We can't do it with preaching. It's very clear that they say, where are your forests? I always proudly say in Latvia there are plenty of forests still, but unfortunately it's not in the whole European Union. So that, I think, is the answer for this.
Commissioner, you may be able to sit there and we can give you a microphone.
No, I could stand with you if it's okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Jamie Piebalgs from the Fenner School at ANU. Thank you for your presentation. I note that many of the low emission technologies, including some that you have discussed, require a lot of fresh water. So carbon capture and storage, for example, requires 50 to 600% more fresh water. In the EU's energy policy, how do you propose to deal with those conflicts and trade-offs between low emission energy and sustaining fresh water?
Well, to be honest, we have not addressed this issue partially because we don't go in the water-consuming technologies. It's not on oil sands and not on coal to liquids. Carbon capture and storage, we basically look for depleted oil and gas fields that could accommodate it. So in our strategy, we don't believe that it makes a lot of impact on water consumption. But it's true that water issues should be addressed and in all environmental strategies. But I believe that our strategy with energy efficiency, renewable, what I told, wind and solar, and well, biomass is a good point, yeah. But in the EU, we have plenty of opportunities still to use better biomass. For example, straw, why we just waste the straw, or wood residue. So we provided for strategies that is not water intensive. And for biofuels, as I told, we have put a lot of sustainability challenges. So I hope that if we follow this strategy, we will not make a strong impact on the water system, but it's the right question that we need to take into the equation also water consumption.
Hi, Peter Horton, just an interested observer, but the Copenhagen Consensus Centre says that rather than making fossil fuels so expensive through an emissions trading system, that we'd get a far better outcome for the environment if every country in the world spent just 0.05% of its GDP on renewable energy resource and development to make that a lot cheaper and much more energy efficient. Is this something that the EU and by extension, I guess, the rest of the world should be considering?
Well, we made our choice. We decided on emission trading scheme. With all the complexity, it encourages for innovation. So we will stick to ETS. I know that you can, well, just give the grants and perhaps achieve the same results. That's why I'm not saying the ETS is a magical solution. You can use tax system. So there is a lot of different ways how to deal. But for us, we have embarked on ETS. First of all, we have experience, painful experience, but strangely enough, political still acceptable. Second, also with particular issue for the EU, we have unanimity in tax policy. And we have very different tax policies in the EU. And well, to get some common tax policy in this, it's practically impossible. So ETS is also the one that all member countries accept. We have European cap, we have European auctioning. So we will continue to struggle with the scheme and say and try to convince that it is the best strategy. But I don't exclude that there could be as efficient strategy, so it should not be the only strategy.
Commissioner, thanks again for your talk. It's been very interesting. I'm James Prest from the Centre for Climate Law and Policy. I wanted to ask a question about the specifics of European renewable energy support law and this issue of harmonisation. And I wanted to get a feeling for your position comparing feed-in tariffs with tradable renewable electricity certificates. And I mean, I understand that there was a push to perhaps that would have affected Germany and Spain in terms of their policy with feed-in tariffs. So if you could just elaborate upon that, please.
Well, it was a big fight. It was a big fight because there was a perception that feed-in tariffs make an impact on internal market because it's different in different countries. But as in my opinion, it's transitory measure. I don't mind what policy member countries support of penetration of new technology. Feed-in tariffs have been the most successful. It's true. If we see what will happen in Spain, in Germany, it was very successful. If I see green certificates, Sweden is a good example, but it took a couple of years to achieve the result. And to destroy the system would be wrong. Additional consideration was, because it's always about the costs. If we make a, well, virtual trade was, well, this issue was virtual trade with certificates, well, whenever you produce. I was afraid that we will use the cheapest potential. Let's assume it's wind. But we don't develop the technologies, perhaps today more expensive, but tomorrow more advantageous, like photovoltaics. Photovoltaics would not be used, or some other technologies that requires bigger innovation. So this is transitional arrangements, and I believe that most importantly is that we achieve the target, even if there is perturbation in the market, and well, the ones that criticized us now are accepting it, and big energy utilities are investing a lot in offshore wind, so they swallowed it, and there is not such a big change in the internal market. Then about the increase of the costs. Well, it's true that renewable energy support costs money, but if I see the overall price that we pay for energy, well, it's negligible. It's really negligible. It was done by, well, some lobby groups that tried to accuse renewable energy on the growth of the costs. If I see what happened with oil price or gas price or even with coal price, it's nothing to compare what we are paying to getting new technologies there. So that's why we allow each member country to follow the strategies they would like, but most of them use feed-in tariffs, and that have been so far the most successful policy.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Ricardo Ridolfi, student ANU. My question relates to renewable energy and the financial architecture that you related to and incentives. Now, I'm aware that in Luxembourg there's a JRF fund which deals with public-private partnership funding in renewable energy for developing countries. Now, does the Commission explore similar type of public-private partnership funding for intra-EU expansion of renewable energy?
Well, not exactly, because well, it's a liberalized energy market, so any company could invest in renewable energy. So we don't need particular vehicles. We don't exclude such a type, But from the EU side, we don't make this type of construction, so it is very much based on the stability of investment, or it comes through feed-in, or it comes through the green certificates. And at the same time, there are new ventures that comes into the market and existing ones that invest. So we are trying to strengthen the process through European Investment Bank loans, but it's not exactly that we are making such a type of ventures, or at least we from the Commission side.
We're looking at some fairly bright lights. I think there's one more question there, and we may, I think I'll call that the last one. I don't see any other pressing questions.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. John Short, interested community member. Something happening in Australia at the moment is with an upcoming cap and trade is people in the home that are considered green or want to be taking some sort of action, if they reduce their emissions, it allows the emissions of other entities such as big companies to increase. Did the EU have a similar problem, and if so, is there anything that you did to try and get around that?
Well, emission trading scheme means that you have less allowances to emit, so you need to buy. So nobody could escape from this. From if you are in emission trading system, you covered. So each provides its fair share. What concerns the individual citizens, then it's their choice. I could use green supplier. So the market is rather developed, so I could get only renewable energy in my home. So the supplier guarantees it. So we don't have, I think, perturbation of this kind, because whatever sector is, it is included in emission trading scheme, and well, they have less allowances, or they buy additional, or they sell it, but with each year they're in less and less. We also now in finalization of including aviation in the emission trading scheme, and from 2012 it will be in it. And well, we are thinking about shipping, but it's more challenging for us to really have it under emission trading schemes. That is, I think, the positive issue with emission trading. Nobody could escape, because you need to provide allowances that you have used to produce your commodity.
Thank you very much. There are indeed a few more questions, but I think, Commissioner, we've probably taken quite a lot of your time, and I think I'll call an end to the questions at that point. On your behalf, colleagues, I would like to thank the Commissioner for his presentation this evening. I've watched him start from constructing a story with climate change, population growth, the importance of energy issues. I've seen him tonight walk in a remarkably coherent way through the issues that I know occupy the thoughts of many of the people here this evening in their own particular perspectives. I myself found the analysis of the technology issues that the EU is addressing to be quite fascinating. I think I wouldn't be alone in identifying the passion of the Commissioner and his appetite and appreciation of the importance of taking these very complex global issues down to the human scale, and it's been really quite remarkable to see the way that he's done that. He finished with a plea for the importance of Copenhagen, and many of you would know that the ANU is intensely engaged already with the Copenhagen process, and we will in fact remain engaged right through to the end of that process. And I think many of us would look forward, as the Commissioner does, to the successful outcome of that activity. So on your behalf, let me thank Commissioner Piebalgs for his presentation tonight, and if I can, Commissioner, give you a small token of our appreciation.